I got to thinking about it. Like, I think it's way more important to communicate properly over Zoom because the people don't feel it as much. And so there's just some little things that I want to share with you that I think will help. And um, some of the things that I was reading and studying here the last few days, I thought, I could get better at that, get better at that. So I'm talking to myself as much as I'm talking to you guys. Okay. So I'm not saying I have this all figured out. But I remember when I got started in networking in 2000. I was an engineer, and so I just didn't have good people skills. I hadn't sold anything. I did a few real estate deals, but really no sales. Hadn't read any sales books, no people skills books. I'd read about 3 chapters out of John Maxwell's book, 21 Irrefutable Laws of a Leader. And the only reason I read those 3 chapters is because I thought it would make me a better boss of people. So that's not a good combination coming into a sales and leadership. So we have to start out with what are you naturally? Are you naturally an introvert or an extrovert? Which one comes naturally to you? You need to understand that. Um, when I got started in this industry, I would say I was neither. I was an introvert or extrovert. I was an awkward. I was awkward. I like Amy can vouch for this. If we ever went to one of our work parties or something like that, I was the guy over in the corner until I had enough courage juice. And then I would come out, and this is years ago. I haven't had a drink in 26 years, but it would take me a few primers before I come out and talk to somebody because I really wasn't um, introverted. I was so selfish. I wasn't a Christian. I was so selfish. I thought if you can't offer me anything, why would I talk to you? Like I have nothing in common with you. I would not even look to talk to somebody. And I'm telling you all this to tell you that all of us have this in us. Even if we've been walking with the Lord for a while, that can still be in there. I can fall back into these old ways, okay? So my uh awkwardness, I'm an awkwardvert. My awkwardness came out when I showed my first plan. And some of you have heard this story. I want it to be on this recording just to illustrate you don't have to be good, you just have to do something. So uh, I was showing plans. I probably only had shown maybe eight or 10 people I'd shown on my own. And then the guy that got me started in networking was supposed to come do a meeting. We were going to have a whole bunch of people at this house. His name's Mark, great guy. And Mark called me on my Nextel, which tells you how long ago it was. He calls me on my Nextel and said, hey man, what's up? I said, nothing, I'm here. It's like, we're starting a meeting in 10 minutes. How far out are you? He said, I'm not coming. I said, what do you mean you're not coming? Well, who's going to show these people? He said, you are. You're going to do great. I left what you need on the front. Back then it was a whiteboard. I left it on the front porch and I thought I was going to fall over dead. I seriously did. I was so scared. I was not ready. And here's the point. You might not be ready either. Doesn't matter if you're ready. Are you willing? Being ready, as if we're going to be leaders, it's not about being ready. And I could tell you my first solar deal, and I could tell you all kinds of firsts that I had to do that I absolutely was not ready for, but I did it anyways out of necessity. And so, it meant whether it's a little thing or a big thing, okay? Then by the way, everybody there got started because they felt sorry for me, and I never saw them again. Not a single one of them. They never came to a meeting, never talked to me, never placed another order. Gone. They're just out there floating around somewhere. I seriously think they felt sorry for me. So, but what it did for me is it built my confidence. Now, it wasn't warranted confidence because I was still awful, and I went and I proved it at my next meeting. So my next meeting was only about 4 days away, and it was this 5,000 square foot house, this big beautiful house. At the time, Amy and I were living in like a 1,600 square foot house. So I was in this house trying to tell people they could have a house like this house that I was in. And in the audience, there was a engineering manager, a doctor, a lawyer, and a real estate developer, or something like that. And I showed the most masterful plan for about 13 minutes. That's all I remember was 13 minutes worth of material. I got done. Every one of them said no, and a couple of them even used words, heck no, or something. Like they just didn't want anything to do with it. And so I put my marker back and I went away and I walked out with my tail between my legs. Now, I think back on that, I think, I can't even believe that I was that scared. What the heck was I that afraid of? Like, they weren't going to throw anything at me. Like, I didn't want what they had. That just wasn't what I was looking for. Not that they were bad people. I just didn't want what they had. I was trying to convince them to have what I was doing, but I couldn't get that right. Why? My story wasn't strong enough. I believed in the strategy big time. Like, I thought what I was doing was the best thing in the world at the time, but my story was wrong. And the story was about myself. Okay. So I didn't believe in myself enough. And I was worried about my presence and how did I look and would I relate to these people and all that stuff. And that's not what it's about. When you can relate to people and get them to form a good opinion of you, um, I heard something the other day. How to Win Friends and Influence People. Everybody read that book? At least heard of it? Okay. If you have not read the book, here's the highlights. People don't care how good you are, or how sharp you are, how impressive you are. They only care that you care about them. And they want to know, they want you to prove it that you care about them. There's the book. There you go. That's the Cliff Notes version of that book. So I didn't understand that for months. I was still trying to convince people to come along to my way of thinking. So I was just thinking about you would be a good thing to say to somebody when you meet them or when you see them again. There's all these little phrases that you can say to people when you call them on the phone or whatever. Now, make sure that these little things are true, but we're putting off these signals to people. And studies show that we've all probably read this in different books. There's, hand signals, all this, but there's actually a study that was done. Let me read the exact. There was a study done by a university, and they determined that in 200 milliseconds, that people will read your eyes and the emotion that you're putting off, and they'll feel that. And if they feel fear, if they feel uncertainty, if they feel lack of belief, it doesn't matter what you say. Their opinion is formed. 200 milliseconds. Like, that's like blinking of your eye. That's so fast. So if you don't have this belief, if you don't have your story right, the rest of it just doesn't matter. This is another story I thought was very fascinating. I think this is out of the Captivate book, or maybe some other book. I can't remember where I got this, but this one's kind of gross, but it proves a point. So they take these people into a lab, 12 people on one side of the lab, 12 people on the other side of the lab, and they all got the same kind of sweatsuits on. And here's what they did with them. One group A, they said, you're going to go run on a treadmill and work up a sweat. And they got all sweaty, kind of workout, exercise, sweaty. And then group B, they took them in an airplane and they said, you're going to learn how to skydive for the first time. And they made sure none of them had ever done it before. So they had a different kind of sweat. What kind of sweat? Fear sweat. Then they took these people and put them in it's called a KMRI machine. And it's like a live, they can look at how your brain fires or whatever. They put these subjects in there. Some of them were in this test. Some of them had no idea what it was. Now, this is the gross part. When they had them smell the sweat from the people that were exercising, it didn't really do anything to their brain. When they smelled the sweat of the people that were fearful from jumping out of the airplane, it fired their amygdala immediately. You could see the difference, and they felt the fear. How crazy is that? So go jump out of an airplane, get sweaty, smell your armpits. You'll be scared. Let somebody else smell them. It's just crazy how the human body can sense these things. Now, thankfully, we're on Zoom, so if you're sitting there nervous, nobody's going to smell your armpits. That's a good thing. But they can sense what you're putting off. We've all heard this saying, the saying, they're smelling what you're selling. Well, they're also smelling what you're not selling. So if you're not sold, if your story's not good, all these little cues, these little things that you're doing are not going to relate to people. So let's start out here. Be impressed with them, not impressive. If you're worried about being impressive, then that's going to make you nervous and they're going to sense that. Be impressed with them, not overly. But I'll give you an example. Yesterday, I was on a Zoom with a new guy down at the bottom of one of the legs there, and we were talking to this chiropractor. He's been a chiropractor for I don't know how many years, decades, and very successful chiropractor. He's got like I knew going into the meeting, he's got 40,000 clients on his influence list. So this is kind of a big deal. But I said, you know what? I'm not going to try to impress this guy. I'm going to be impressed with him. I'm going to believe in my story, but I'm going to really focus on complimenting him. What are most doctors most proud of? What's the thing they're most proud of? Being a doctor, right?
I don't.
And so even if you think, well, you can make more money doing this than being a doctor, maybe that's true. But they're very proud of being a doctor or a nurse or whatever, and they should be. They worked hard for that. Or a lawyer. I see Vin and Charles on here. Like they worked hard for that. So compliment them on that. Now I didn't go overboard, but it's kind of weird with the doctor. Some doctors will be offended if you call them Joe. You don't want to call them by their name. They get offended. And then we're offended that they're offended. And why should I have to call you? Get over that. What if my story, if I feel so low about myself, I can't call somebody else doctor, that's my problem, not theirs. If they don't want to speak to me unless I call them doctor, if I don't address them properly or whatever, okay, that's their problem. But guess what? It becomes my problem if I'm the leader because they got some like real bad self-image issues and they need to be around the team, to get past that label. So this guy, I call Dr. Choppy is his name, but I called him Doc. I just called him Doc a few times. And he said I could call him Greg, but the more the guy talked, the more impressive he was. And so I wanted to call him Doc because the dude's smart. Like he got it, everything. And you know what? At the end, it wasn't like a massive close. I never talked to him about the income, nothing. I said, so let me ask you, Doc, which one of these looks best to you? The Advanced Plus, Premium, you got the practice there. Well, I think I want to try it. I want to just try some first before, I open up to my whole. I said, yep, appreciate that. Yep, appreciate that. Always open palms. I appreciate that. I felt that way too. Here's what I found. We watched testimonials. So he got started on Advanced Plus. That was his low bar was Advanced Plus. He wasn't going to quite do Premium. But I made sure to make it a point to make him feel comfortable. And frankly, a chiropractor that really understands how the body works, most of us aren't going to be able to impress it with all of our little things that we learn how to say through reading these slides. We're just not going to impress somebody like that. So I relied on David Schmidt, the videos, and I kind of like interviewed him and see how he felt on it. Okay. So, let's see. So questioning people, is a good one too. In the way that we communicate with people. So I talked about hands. Y'all ever notice I use my hands a lot? Particularly when we start doing a Thursday night Zoom, I'll say something like, I was an engineer. I didn't have any medical background at all. Some of the stuff ties together. I don't know. But open palms, it removes defenses in other people. Little things like that. So especially if you're like a special forces tough guy or something like that, you really might want to focus on open palms. Oh, Peter, you're on here. I didn't know that. Yeah. Some of us have to go a little overboard on this open palm stuff, okay? And there's little things. How many have heard of tone, the way that you talk to somebody? Tim Brister, you probably learned this in insurance, but the way that you tail off words up and down, there's this, I'll call it the California. I know we got some Californians on here, but I think the Californians invented this to talk and ask everything like it's a question, and it's all really cool, and you tail up at the end. And what happens when you do that is you lose credibility. If you tail down the word, like if you tell Nick, that's a really cool vest you got on there, Nick. If you keep it level or you tail it down when you want to make the point. So which one would be better for you, the core or the advance? The core or the advance? Which one sounds better? Which one would be better for you, you think? The core or the advance? Tail it down. Those little things make a huge difference. Why do we get out of our normal tone? Because we're worried about our image, we're worried about how we look, we're worried about are we impressive, not impressed. That's the difference. Remember, if you could just get that one thing, be impressed, not impressive. If you don't worry about being impressive, then you're not going to be having these stinky, sweaty armpits that people can sense fear.
Tim,
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just feel like I'm not clearly getting this open palm and defensiveness.
Yeah,
I mean, I see what you're doing and I see how to do it. I'm not grasping the where does that come from and why. I never have heard this before. Please help me
yeah.
understand.
So Anthony Robbins talks about it. Captivate talks about it. Dress for Success talks about it. But open palms it's a submissive, like I'm not an expert in this field, and it removes their. And you don't always have to do it, but it removes the I'm an expert. It takes you from being the message to the messenger. It neutralizes you.
Can I say something, Tim?
Yeah.
So, um, in self-defense, when before you strike in the streets, when somebody's going to attack you, they actually always tell you to, when you're being trained, to say, I'm sorry, I got everything. And this allows the perpetrator to think that you're actually submitting to him. This right here. And then
Yeah.
obviously that right here also allows you to attack. But this is, you just do this and you put your down. So it is a psychological, it has a psychological, immediate psychological effect that you are submitting and you're humbling yourself.
Yeah. That's good. So the difference between what we're doing and what Peter does as special forces guy, he gets them to disarm and then he puts a knife in their ribs. We're not going to do that. We're going to go ahead and sell them some patches. It'll be a little bit different.
No.
But that's right. It's a form of submission. Now, you don't have to do it 10 times during the plan or whatever, but when you're getting, here's a good lead into it. Like when you're getting ready to talk about David Schmidt, for instance, you know, it takes me kind of out of the picture. It makes me more vanilla. Man, this guy David Schmidt, I got to tell you, you don't have to do it for very long. This guy David Schmidt, I got to tell you, I knew a couple people that had a patent or two, but I didn't know anybody had 200 patents to his name. You know, those little things make a difference. It makes me the messenger, vanilla, whatever you want to call it. Another thing too, and you'll notice, and I hope probably a lot of you are doing it. I just haven't seen hardly. I don't think I've seen any of you guys or gals show the plan yet. If you can get somebody to laugh or giggle at least a couple times, you win. If you notice, some of you that watch us show the plan every Thursday, what do I say about the circulation foot? You know, it shows the patch on top of the foot. I show the first one. Second. What do I say every week? I say the same thing every week. See if you pick up on it.
Probably not.
What?
Probably not going to be a foot model anytime soon.
Not going to get any foot modeling jobs. I say it every week. And if you're sitting there thinking, well, that's not funny, I heard that last week. Here's the issue. If you have new people there, you'll be excited that remember this principle. Don't tell new things to old people. Tell old things to new people. That's how this grows. Don't tell new things to old people. Tell new things. Tell old things to new people. Yeah, I had it backwards there. So I find something that works and I'll make it work. You know, Tim Brister called me probably about a month ago. He and I got on a Zoom and he gave me some criticism, constructive. We had a great conversation about different things in the plan and a couple other people talk. I heard somebody say something about the leg wound and it was too much and you know, and so that was a couple times I heard it. And I asked Amy, I said, honey, speak freely. Tell me the truth. What do you think? And she didn't bat an eye, did you? She said, take it out. All right, there's three. Three's a charm. It's gone, baby. And so it's gone. Now we know we have it in our arsenal. We got to use it. But just because I like it, it's one of those things. Remember, we talked about last manager's call. Is we want to function on principles, not preferences. It's my preference that it's in there, but principally, it might not be the best for everybody. You know, and so Amy has worked more on. And again, Tim's recommendation. Amy's worked more on talking about if you're healthy, because that's her story. She's just healthy, and so you don't have to have your leg falling off or diabetes or, had surgery or whatever. You just want to be healthy, So all these things help the whole story to come together. So create a moment of laughter and feel free to do it the same in every plan. That way you don't have to think of something new. You might sometimes, but how many of you, when you are showing somebody the technology right now, have some point where you make yourself a goofball or you laugh at one of the slides? Anybody, do you have that in there naturally yet? Okay, cool. What do you got, Kevin? Can you share it?
I talk about, there's a picture of a foot, and I say, look, the best thing to do here is call a tow truck. And so it's one of those, you say old things to new people. So my poor wife, she goes through this almost every day. I have a ton of dad jokes. I say the same dad jokes over and over and over again. She has heard them all 100 times. But as soon as we're in front of somebody new, one of those dad jokes is getting recycled. She already knows halfway through. She's like, oh, geez. And she knows, and it's going to come out.
Yeah. That's good.
Mary Lou, what's yours?
Mine is it's a slide you don't use so much anymore, but preference. I use it for everything. The guy with the lipoma. And just because medically, I know that that's a very common condition that there is no really cure for. But one time I was showing the plan for someone and she was sitting across the table from her prospect. And it was like as if she had never seen that picture before, because she looked at it and she goes, oh, I have one of those. And I'm going to move my camera. She literally is like this all over her chest. And she's trying to find it. She has her hand in her shirt. And I'm like, Holly, please take your hands out of your clothes in the middle of this restaurant. What are you doing? She's like, it's gone. Mine is gone. Since I've been wearing the patch, mine is gone. I mean, it was startling to her. She forgot she had it until she saw that picture. And then she's now selling to the prospect. It's gone. I remember I had that. People used to come up to her in the grocery store and say, you should really get that checked out. She said, where did it go, Mary Lou? I'm like, well, it didn't go down. It's gone. So I never will take it out. Because I can tell that story even if Holly's not there. I say, now one of the girls I work with, this is how it went for her.
Yeah, that's perfect. And the way you tell it is perfect. You get excited, you believe in it, you've heard it, because you heard it directly from her, right? You can tell that you believe this story because you saw it with your own 2 eyes. That's good.
And you can all use it.
Yeah, that was really good. Okay, so we're in the middle of some of these points here, and I want to do a little pattern interrupt because some of this stuff might seem a little bit tedious. It's really not. Here's what I would encourage you to do. The next Zoom that you do, record it and watch it and see how many of these things you're doing, how you're talking. Are you tailing your words up? Are you trying to get people to all these little things? And don't get overly critical, but just ask yourself, man, would I buy from this person? And if the answer is yes, fantastic, but could you get better? Because you might be, closing a bunch of people right now. That's great. I love to watch my videos, not because I like to watch myself, but because I like to see how I can get better. And always there's room. And the reason that we'll get better, there's 2 things that'll motivate us, okay? Inspiration or desperation, not preference. Keep that in mind. You will not change because you prefer to change. It's either going to be inspiration or desperation. Only those 2 things. That's what motivates human beings. I hate to say it. Preference will not do it. Most of us probably, I'll speak for the guys, most of us guys would probably prefer to be ripped and have a 6-pack and big biceps and be in perfect shape. We would probably prefer that. But I'm not inspired enough to do it, and I'm not desperate enough to do it. Now, maybe if Amy packed her bags or something and said, I'm out of here, let's get a 6-pack, that might do it. Actually, I'd tell her, see you later. No, I'm just...
We never say that. Where did this come from?
I would say, look, baby, I got an ab. It's one. It's a big one. Yeah. But remember that inspiration or desperation, not preference. When I'm not hitting my goals, when I'm not reading enough, when I'm not watching enough podcasts, when I'm not doing the things that'll take me closer to my goals, it's because I'm either not inspired or I'm not desperate. I'm preferring to do something else. All right. So, another thing is on your speech, where Mary Lou ramped up there, you heard her passion, her excitement, and all that. And I'm not suggesting she does this. You do not want to show the whole presentation like that. You want to be conversational. Like your presentation should be like you just walked into a coffee shop, you know, and you want to say something nice about them. Like hopefully when you're walking up there, if it's somebody you know, you were thinking about them on the way there, and you can tell, man, I was thinking about you and just wondering how the kids were and everything, whatever, catch up with them and be very conversational about it. Just totally chill and then do the disarm thing when, when appropriate. And that just removes all the barriers. Okay. So casual, calm, and, practice this. What I don't recommend, I love scripts for contacting. I don't love scripts for talks. There's been studies. How many have seen TED Talks? You all know what TED Talks are? Very famous. The best TED Talks, if you look at the ones that, the difference between one that has 20, 30,000 views and one that has 1.6 million views, it could be the subject matter, but most of the time, it's the people are really good communicators. It's not always the subject matter. And I did some studying on this, and those people that get the most views on TED Talks, they don't use scripts. They don't believe in teleprompters, and they only use bullet points. Meaning it's conversational. We're just talking. What I'm doing here is bullet points. I didn't write the whole thing out because then I got to try to read it. And if I find myself reading too much, that's when I fumble. How do you get to that point? Well, you show more people. And always remember, when you start showing this, they have no clue what you're showing. They don't know if you did it wrong or right, or what you said. Did it make sense? They don't know. They've probably never seen this before. I actually showed a guy last night who had seen it before, and he was excited about it, but he didn't have the money to get started. So that happens. So no scripts. And mirroring. Let's talk a little bit about that. What does this mean? Closed off, not interested. So when you get somebody that does that on Zoom, has anybody had anybody fold their arms on Zoom yet? This one might be more common on Zoom. Just chilling, look like they're riding in their 1970 Caddy or something. Mirroring people and learning to draw them back is really important. Learning that, and I'm not going to go into a whole topic about talk about mirroring, but it is important. And I'm telling you, if you learn some of these things, and you'll learn them through watching your own videos and then studying it. Like I've heard it said that when you learn the technique of mirroring and using your voice properly, it's like having a remote control for the other person. That's probably a little too overboard for me. Like I don't want to manipulate anybody, but kind of lead them and get them to come back in. So if somebody's sitting back like this, I know I might need to bring my voice up a little bit and lean in and maybe even get a little bit closer to the camera. And the number one thing to get somebody off their couch is to say, man, Hans, it's good to see you. I got to tell you, I really like that sweatshirt. Could you tell me where you got that?
Under Armour.
Under Armour. All right. I was going to wait all night. It could be, it doesn't matter what the question is. When you pause, you ask a question and pause, they'll get so uncomfortable. They're going to disarm and they're going to lean forward and they're going to talk to you. If they don't, at that point, I can't imagine anybody could do it really that wrong where they wouldn't, or maybe they're just a total knucklehead And you might run into some of those. I haven't run into one yet in LifeWave. I have in the past, but in solar I ran into a lot of them. So the last thing, a couple things I want to cover here, and then we'll have another discussion about temperaments. But complexity versus clarity. I think that's why just talking to Steve Merritt a lot about the first year they started selling this patch after the patent came out, it was way complex. They literally would put up the patent in a couple of the medical studies and they were showing people that. I mean, it was boring people to tears. I can't imagine if they showed me that and didn't show me any pictures. Like, it would have freaked me out. Mary Lou, you might have liked it and all that stuff, but unless you have a medical background, you're just not going to be excited about that. So that's complexity. We all can fall into that. We all can fall into a state of complexity, especially if we have learned a bunch about this patch and we're so excited about the strategy. Stay more focused on the story. The story is going to drive this thing. So clarity and simplicity, doing something to impress somebody else is just the wrong program. Okay, so clarity is going to pay big dividends. Some people like to use big words. The biggest word I ever use, and I don't use it always during one-on-ones, but I use it on Thursday night. Photobiomodulation. I remember the first time I heard that, I was like, wow, that's a cool word. I liked it, but some people might not. And if you want to disarm, if that's the fanciest word you can say, I remember hearing about red light therapy and this word photobiomodulation. Isn't that so much better? I remember hearing about this word photobiomodulation. And no, I didn't say it. I didn't make that word up. The doctors did. Those little things make a big difference. So clarity versus complexity and big words. Like this word, somebody says, that's a very cogent plan, and it might be devices for some, and on and on and on and on. Well, all these big words that most people don't understand because they don't have a 4-year degree in English or something. You could say cogent, or you could say, this really makes sense, doesn't it? Or instead of divisive, you could say a lot of people wouldn't agree with that. Like when I talk about things that the government's doing or big pharma in my plan, I know that that's divisive, and I know that I'm pushing the envelope a little bit with most people by design. And maybe I go too far sometimes, I don't know, but what I see one-on-one, like this chiropractor yesterday, he was 100%. He said some things to me that I've never said before about big pharma and the medical industry and all that. And by the way, I think he started as somebody I was talking to about Billy today. Billy knows this doctor that I think he does natural stuff now, but he was trained as an MD and he got into it and he went natural. And we see that happening a lot. So the very nature of what we're doing and what we're presenting could be considered divisive. Or if we watch how we present it, it won't be divisive, okay? So then when you get to the end, when you're talking to people, and if you get kickback, remember the way that we quote unquote close is we relate to them from beginning to end. Be impressed, not impressive. All these things. We do that all the way through the whole time we're talking to them. And I don't know what else to call it other than presentation. I don't like that word presentation because it makes it sound like I'm just here to instruct you. I think of a college professor and I'm sitting in a class learning and getting beat up or whatever. It should be more conversational. So when we get to the end, remember, we're only getting their opinion on which wholesale order is best for them. You think it's advanced plus, core, what fits best for you? And if they don't say anything else, I'll tell you what Amy and I did. A lot of people, even if they're single or whatever, they'll think, well, if I did advanced, I'd have too many sleeves. I wouldn't think of it in terms of having 6 months supply, because here's what happens. I use a sleeve, Amy uses a sleeve, we've got 4 kids gone. I've heard other people that don't even have kids living at home, and then they started loaning them out to people, and they were out of sleeves the first day. So That being said, which one works best for you, David? Would it be Advanced or Advanced Plus? I'm gonna wait till you answer, David. He ain't gonna answer. But that pause, even if it's only 3 seconds, it'll make you a lot of money. If you can get uncomfortable, not for my choleric friends, my high D friends, don't do it just to be mean. You might have to put an end to it sometimes, but that pause, it really does help. Kevin, you guys probably do that in Windows, don't you? You pause for effect?
All the time. First one to
Yeah.
speak loses.
Yeah.
And you're using NLP and you're using tonality. You talked earlier about upspeak and downspeak. We
Yeah.
had someone come in and do a training on this last year, and I was aware of it in the past, but just by being really conscious of my upspeak and downspeak, my closing ratio went from 30% to 37%, and I added almost $1 million in revenue that year.
Yeah.
Oh.
All because you knew how to end your words and not take them up? Yeah. Talk like a California guy?
Also, the speed in which you speak.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a huge one. Not speaking more than you want to try to stay between 140 and 160 words per minute. So
How do you count them, Caesar?
we're using I work with Kevin. We're using a new tool called Rilla, and it records you, but it's like a sales ride along tool of
Yeah.
AI, and it counts your words per minute. So I'm actually about 160. I'm actually trying to slow it down a little bit.
Yeah.
But the downturn is one of the number one things, and as well as your words per minute, like your speaking, and also your tonality, right? You want to go up and go down and mix it
Yeah.
up. You don't want to be monotone. So those three things are key.
Yeah. Voice inflection. Now here's a last resort close. Hopefully, I've never had to use this. I got two of them here. And I haven't had to use either one of these in LifeWave yet. One of them is if I can't get Sergio to make a decision, I'll say, Sergio, I might do my hands again. I must have blew it here. I'm so sorry. I didn't do a good job explaining this. When we get to this point, because most people that I share this with, they're excited about it. And obviously I didn't explain something right. So in my mind, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's going to be one of three things in my experience. It's either product, pricing, or the person. And which one of those would you say you had more questions about, you're not feeling good about? And I'll see what he said. Go ahead, Sergio. Tell me which one.
I think it's the person.
If it's the person, then all I can do is apologize for my stinky armpits because I'm really nervous right now.
Yeah, I can smell it.
So if they're like, I don't know, then I'll kind of go through it. Well, I think the product is pretty amazing, right? I mean, we looked at all these slides. Were there any of the slides that you just thought like that's crazy? I don't believe that, or do the slides look pretty genuine to you? Oh yeah, okay. And the pricing, if we compare this to injections, injections are 3, 5, sometimes up to $50,000. So obviously these are a lot less. Okay. Then the last thing, I guess it could only be the person. Did I do something to offend you, or does my breath stink, or whatever? Have a little bit of fun with it. And just kind of what you're trying to do is isolate whatever their quote unquote objection is, or it might just be a smoke screen, and then take care of it. But here's another one. If somebody's really, I would probably try this one first. If somebody's like, I don't know, man, it's kind of tight, money. Let me ask you a question, Nick. What would make this, in your mind, what would make this investment feel more like relief than a risk? How could I help you with that? I want it to feel like relief to you and your family and not a risk. How could I help you with that?
Show me how to make money with it.
All right, perfect. Whatever he says, show me. I need to know more. I need a whatever. If we show the slides correctly, most of the objections you're normally going to get are in there. Have you learned this? That's why we designed it the way that it is. Most of the standard objections are in there. Here's another one I started doing is in the beginning of one-to-ones. I asked them, are you or anybody in your family struggling with anything specific health-wise? I could probably kind of narrow in on that a little bit. That makes them feel more involved, and it also tells me that, wow, if they have somebody with edema or varicose veins or whatever, there's some of those slides I might be able to focus on a little bit more.